And right now it's time for the Check Swing podcast with myself and my man Santa over there getting text messages and stuff. What's going on, brother?
How are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm good. So I'm used to you seeing you with Dick Allen behind you,
Hmm.
with baseballs in his hand and a cigarette. Who's that behind you right now? I don't. Do you even know?
That's Supergirl.
Ah, Supergirl, superhero.
Hmm.
Okay.
So just a little change of atmosphere. This past Sunday, we made the big move to Maryland. So we're staying in a at a family member's house. I'm actually in their theater room, which they've graciously allowed me to occupy.
Sweet.
Yeah. So yeah, football games and movies are pretty phenomenal here.
You're not going to want to leave, are
Uh, no.
you? Well, that kind of brings us to how I always do when I start the show. I always ask how you've been. You kind of got delved into that, but go ahead and delve a little further, I guess. How have you been? The move you said you a little change of atmosphere, and how are things going so far with the first few days? Really, it hasn't even been a week yet.
Yeah, still I'm recovering physically from the move cuz moving an entire house to two different areas of Maryland, and your back, your legs, your knees, and then your back again hurts. So
My neck and my back. Uh,
yeah, so
Rest in peace, AJ Johnson. Damn,
yeah, man.
wow.
Really?
Yeah, he passed away Monday, I believe.
Missed that.
Monday of a heart attack at 57 years old, I believe.
Wow.
But yeah, didn't mean to put a damper on the show and on your information there.
Yeah,
Sorry about
you
that.
could have warned me about that one.
Sorry about
Transition to the
that.
segue.
Yeah, I didn't mean to. Just kind of, I would have been remiss if I didn't do that, right? But like congratulations on everything. I've
Thank
said
you.
it before. I say it again. Um, all the best to you. Did you work today, or have you been working this week?
Yeah, actually, I went right. I logged right back in the morning to my job. So we're temporarily working remote because I happen to come in on the back end of a construction project, so our floor isn't even done yet. But I think they're finishing up, and I think next week we start to go in probably 1 or 2 days, 2 to 3 days a week,
Okay.
starting next week. So the one thing that the transition right now is, for those that know the Baltimore area, getting used to the smell of uh, fresh seafood every other corner,
Smell of the harbor.
the smell of the harbor. But I have to get used to the fact that people either drive really fast or really slow. There's no in between. So,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you'll love it though. I love Maryland. I lived in Maryland for 5 years,
okay.
5.5, or something like that. Longer than I was expected to. Let's put it that way. But I lived there for a while. A lot of nice people. Met a lot of lifelong friends. People I consider family. So I'm sure you enjoy it. I think you'll really love the area. To be honest
Yeah, I
with
love it already. So,
you, it's great. It's great
yeah,
because it's
man.
new. It's new.
It's new
Still
again,
only
fresh.
6 7 months.
I like seafood, so that helps.
Listen, okay, so I've said it on other shows that I'm on, and
Mm.
I've said it in conversation. I do not get crab cakes from anywhere but Maryland. Like, for instance, if I'm at a restaurant here in Pennsylvania, in Philly, somewhere, and they have crab cakes, I'm like, no, I'm not getting it.
Do you get them if they say they're Maryland crab cakes?
I do not.
Understood.
That's like going to Miami and saying they have Philly cheesesteaks. They do not.
Now, a family member said, "Hey, but what about Charlie's? Because there's a Charlie's cheesesteak place around Charlie's authentic Philadelphia cheesesteaks." I said, "Is there a Charlie's in Philadelphia?" And they were like, "I don't know. Like, there's not."
Yeah, see, the further you get away from Philadelphia, it's hit or miss with the cheesesteak, right?
Mhm.
I'm sorry. The closer you are, excuse me, the closer you are outside of the tri-state area, it's hit or miss. The further you are away, it's like no.
Right, right.
But you're close enough that you might be able to get something that's close to authentic. But further you get away, like you hit Virginia, you hit North Carolina, South Carolina, unless they are from Philadelphia and they know what they're doing,
Right.
it's not authentic.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, they actually a lot of times down there call it a steak and cheese sandwich instead of a cheesesteak. So if they
Yeah.
call it steak and cheese, it's not a cheesesteak. Okay, or if they call it a chopped cheese, which New York,
Oh
sure,
God.
I'm sure Mrs. Sanson knows about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a
Embarrassing.
cheesesteak; it's a chopped cheese. Different.
Have you ever had a good authentic cheesesteak from while you were in Maryland?
Wait, say that again.
Have you ever had a cheesesteak? Like I guess authentic or a real cheesesteak in Maryland? Anything close to it?
That's a good question. Close to it, yes. But technically no, because it wasn't a cheesesteak. It was actually a chicken cheesesteak. We used to when I was at UMES, there was a place. It was a gas station slash kind of like a liquor store. It wasn't a liquor store because it wasn't like hard liquor, but it was like you get your beer and your coolers and stuff in there.
Right, right, right,
It was like a convenience store. It's a big convenience store.
right, right, right.
But they had a kitchen place in there called Rudo's, and people would go in there and get food, but the thing to get was the chicken cheesesteak from Rudo's. So that was pretty close to what we get up here. I
Okay,
got it many times. It was
okay,
delicious. And you know what? I'm actually my alumni game is on the 30th or the weekend of the 30th, 31st or something like that.
okay.
So I'm hoping maybe I wonder if Rudo's is still there. I probably won't go, but I wonder if Rudo's is still in there. May not be.
I'll take a look.
Shout out to the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. Um, but today we're going to talk about a few things, but really, only thing I really want to talk about is the who you got because that's all I really like right now is the who you got because it's fun. It's so much fun. I get to think about stuff.
Right.
Like I said, we may talk about some youth sport. Excuse me, travel teams versus high school teams when it comes to sports. Um, the MLB season is coming down the home stretch. I think it's a couple weeks left.
Yeah, and
Um,
no, and nobody wants to win the National League East. Everybody, nobody wants to win it.
no, nobody wants to win it. For what? For who? For what?
Right.
I was at the game on Monday here in Philadelphia and Baltimore game, which you're close to Baltimore now. Just coincidence.
Wasn't it?
I actually got there late. I got there after the first inning. Baltimore had already scored their 2 runs. The game ended in a 2-0 win for Baltimore. So I did not see one run cross the plate that day. Not a one. Not one. But yesterday, Phillies did come back and they won an extra innings yesterday against Baltimore. So they won 3-2. Don't know what the standings are looking like.
They're, they're,
Honestly,
they're three down, and so every time the Phillies lose, so do the Braves, and every time the Phillies win, so do the Braves.
and that's a formula for not catching up in the wild card standings or in the
That,
NL East standings.
right, and remember about a month ago, I said like the Phillies were in good shape as long as they didn't get injured, and then Hoskins, and then I think
Yeah,
McCutcheon went down for them. Yeah,
Hoskins out for the season. McCutcheon no longer knows how to hit against right-handed pitching. Didi Gregorius is like took 4 steps back. I don't know what happened to Didi in
I've
at
never
the
seen.
plate or in the field.
I haven't seen anybody play that bad as shortstop in Philadelphia sports since Juan Bell. Do you remember Juan Bell?
I do remember Juan Bell.
Right. Well,
I remember the name. I don't remember him how he looked for the Phillies though. But I do
he
remember him.
he he was the starting shortstop in '93, and by the end of April, he was no longer in the major leagues. So that should tell you something. Yeah,
Damn.
he made like 13 errors in like a span of 2 weeks. They're like, okay, we're done. We're bringing up Kevin Stocker, and
And I
that was that.
remember Kevin Stocker.
Yeah,
He made you forget about Juan Bell, kind of.
kind of.
But we're talking. Let's talk to who you got. Who you got? I want to get into that.
Okay.
Who you got? I keep my nose keeps burning. Like I need to sneeze so bad. I'm holding it in. It's crazy.
It's funny you say it. I was on a training thing, and the guy sounds like a marketing guy. Like he sounds like Mr. Movie Guy. Like, and I thought he was like a recording.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he sneezed. Like you can hear this. He's like, like 4 times. I was like, he's like, oh, excuse me. And anyway, we're going back. I was like, that was the nastiest spittle sneeze I've ever heard.
Never again.
Never again.
So who you got, Miguel? What you put together for us this week on the who you got?
All right, so I was kind of piggybacking a couple weeks ago. We had Coach Chase and Travis Fitter, who was you know leading members, leading coaches of Ascent Athlete, and very briefly for about 2 or 3 minutes, we started talking about that Mount Rushmore of great players. Um, so I was kind of thinking sometimes when we think about like the greatest players, like you're an infield guy, I'm a catcher guy. So I think like automatically, all right, who are the best catchers? Put them on Mount Rushmore. You may, have one of the best infielders or whatever. But I was thinking like to make this fair and to kind of cover all aspects of it, um, why don't we let me share my stuff.
Whew, excuse me.
Hey, we bored already?
Yes.
That's not good. Um,
This is
So, think about Mount Rushmore. So I was thinking, well, what if we did it in a way, that's fair and impartial? So on our Mount Rushmore, our four players will consist of the best outfielders or the best outfielder that ever lived, the best infielder that ever lived, catcher, and pitcher, because those are the main positions, on the field. I think that would kind of be the fairest way to kind of, you know, crown the greatest of all time on this Mount Rushmore. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah.
So first, I wanted to mention some of the like honorable mentions that were great players, but didn't really make the list. So you see four players kind of pictured here. One of them is Frank Robinson. So special thing about Frank Robinson, he was actually the first African American baseball manager. He coached the Cleveland Indians, I believe, in 75, 76. And he also was the first black manager in the National League. So he coached the San Francisco Giants in the early to mid '80s, I believe, and then he wound up going back to coach in for the Baltimore Orioles. Um, his stat line was pretty good: 294 batting average, 389 OB on base percentage, close to 600 home runs. Um, I think he kind of comes up short just because he was kind of in a pitching error. So, his numbers didn't really stand out. You see Pete Rose there getting ready to make the second to last out of the 1980 World Series. And I put Pete Rose up here because everybody thinks about like him being the greatest hitter of all time, between him and Ichiro, personal opinion. Um, However, he was never great defensively. He started out as an outfielder. His first 5 or 6 years, he was an outfielder. So that's why, I kind of put him here. But he played pretty much every position with the exception of shortstop and pitcher and catcher because he wasn't great defensively. So when we think of like great players, we're thinking of all around offense, defense. Of course, you see Joe DiMaggio and Mickey Mantle. Um, Again, kind of different eras, but when you think about the greatest of all time, and their uh, I guess their what's the word I'm looking for? Their effect on society. They still kind of come up short. Mickey Mantle injured, even with all the injuries, never really played a full season. Still managed to hit 500 and some odd home runs. So, try to narrow it down. Maybe this week we'll just do just the outfielders. All right. So in the who you got, I have about five. The top five, arguably some of the greatest outfielders of all time that are going to go on the outfield portion of our Mount Rushmore. Make
Now let me
sense?
let me ask you this: when we're picking these guys, are we only picking them defensively, or are we picking them for? And I believe you kind of touched on it. Are we picking them for overall defense, offense, everything?
All of it. And because when you think about greatest of all time, like again, like in this picture, when you think of Pete Rose, you think of the hits, right? But you don't think of any of the defense.
No, no.
Right. Same thing, kind of the same thing with Frank Robinson. He was better defensively than Pete Rose, but again, was he better than, Willie Mays? And same thing with DiMaggio and Mantle. Mantle was kind of like borderline because he was a switch hitter and he had great power from both sides of the plate, and at one point was one of the fastest players ever until he got injured all the time, and then alcohol and all those other distractions happen. So yeah, I'm saying this is all around as close to 5 tool as possible.
Okay, gotcha,
Make sense?
gotcha.
So number 5 on the list would be Mr. Ted Williams. So you see his stat line there. Career stat 344 hitter, 521 home runs. His WAR is 123. Had a 5-year peak. One of the things on the players that I show you that I was really kind of interesting, and I think I picked on this with Barry Bonds, right? Barry Bonds versus Reggie Jackson and the postseason and all that. A lot of these Hall of Famers weren't great in the postseason, which was like surprising to me. So, like for instance, I think where's his?
I have a theory on that. I have a theory on why a lot of the great players
Mhm.
were not great in the postseason.
What's your theory?
My theory on that, and think of it from the coach's perspective, from a coaching perspective. If you are in a playoff series against any great player, I don't pick one, you don't want that player to beat you,
Right,
right? It's not like in basketball where you can say, "All right, I'm going to let LeBron beat me, but I'm not going to let anyone else on the team beat me." Like it's either one or the other. I'm going to let LeBron beat me, but nobody else on the team is going to beat me, or
mhm,
I'm going to make LeBron make someone else beat me because I'm not going to let LeBron beat me.
right,
In baseball, it's just let me not let Barry Bonds hit a home run. Let me not let you know understand what I'm saying? You
right,
can keep
right,
you as a defender, you can control the narrative of the opponent
right,
because you control the ball.
right,
So I think great players tend to not be great in the postseason because they get pitched around. They get walked. They're in situations where they can make something happen and you don't let as a coach, you don't let that happen.
right. And in Ted Williams' situation, I can't remember. I think it was. I can't remember the team they played. I was. I think it was the Cardinals. They played in the '46 World Series, and they actually were the first team to do the shift that we always talk about that we absolutely hate, but that
I
for
hate that.
whatever reason no one can hit against. But they actually did the shift the first time against Ted Williams, and in that World Series he went 5 for 25.
Mm.
No extra base hits, only had one RBI, and this is where he started the him and the Boston press started to kind of butt heads because everybody's like, well, why don't you just hit it the opposite way? And his kind of fight back was like, well, I'm not going to change what made me successful just for a couple of games, and ruin my whole swing. And everybody's like, it's the World Series. You know what I mean? You're trying to win this thing, and I think
sounds
he
sounds familiar, don't
sounds familiar, don't it?
it?
So that was his kind of take on that whole thing. But yeah, it was interesting to see because I was looking at a top 10 list from several entities and looking at their postseason numbers. Like some of the greatest were absolutely horrible in the World Series. Um, so yeah, you got Ted Williams. On the list, and then we'll kind of come around once I present the other four. We can kind of say who you got, and kind of go from there. So the next player would be Willie Mays,
Which would definitely be one of my picks.
and he's always been a favorite of mine because again, 5 tool. Highlights of him. You see him hitting, running, stealing, making the over the shoulder catches. Those are his numbers there. He actually was close to 700 home runs, and I believe at one point was number 2 on the all time homer list, and just came up short. Had a long career, but just couldn't last as long as.
Can
Hen-
you I'm sorry, can you hide that so I can see that 5-year peak number? You see where it says stop sharing and hide?
my bad, my bad.
Yeah, no problem. Okay.
So when it says 5-year peak, so every player usually has like a set 5 years. Um,
Okay.
where they were just out of this world, so to speak.
Hmm.
Um, so in those 5 years, for let's say 29 home runs for 13 consecutive years, finished in the top six National League vote 12 times, won several World Series. He was a defensive catalyst. Played center field for the Giants for quite a few years. Towards the end, he had one last run, got the New York Mets to the pennant in '73, but they came up short against Reggie Jackson. Hello. Um, I'm always gonna throw that jab in there.
Yes, you are. You are.
Um, so he's probably, I would say, out of all the ones that I'll present, is probably the best. I'd say best all around.
Okay. So you
Average
got
power, speed.
Ted Williams and Willie Mays there, and between the two of them, you're taking Willie Mays over Ted Williams. It's
I
tough.
am.
I know it's tough. That's what makes the Mount Rushmore so great.
Yeah. So the next player would be the great Henry
Hammer and
Aaron.
Hank.
Hammer and Hank. And those are his numbers there. So, for quite a few years, almost 30, 40 years, he was the unanimous, undisputed home run king. Um, Interesting stat about him, he never hit over 50 home runs in his career.
Hmm.
I think the most he ever hit in a season may have been about 45. Um,
Well, there was a time period there where like 50 was like the most that was going to be hit for a very
right,
long time up until the late 90s when steroids got involved.
right. I mean, and even then, there was like what, between, like, let's say 70 and 90, there may have been two or three players that hit 50 home runs. So yeah, it was definitely, you know, he was at the end of the 50s era, going into, the pitching era of the late 60s, and then power was starting to come back in the 70s. Um, he did win an MVP in 57. He actually did have pretty good success in the postseason, but only played in 17 postseason games. Did win a World Series in his rookie year against the Yankees, and did play well in his only other playoff appearance against the Mets in the '69 NLCS, which was the first playoff um, series before the World Series. Overall, he batted 362 in October and had six home runs in 69 at bats.
You know, I just realized something. I know exactly who you're picking for your outfielder, but go ahead.
Who I'm picking?
Who you're
I'm,
going? I know who you're going to pick for your.
but you know what's funny though? Like, I've been working on this all day, and I still was like, I don't know.
I think I know who you're picking.
And I say that because of the next two, or the last two. Right, the next one's kind of controversial because of the era that he played in. So of course, Barry Bonds, and I didn't pick him because his head's big enough to fit on Mount Rushmore by itself. But I know that was a cheap shot. But that
Well,
was
that
a
ruined
cheap
any
shot.
interview we get with Barry.
Doesn't matter. He's not coaching anyway. Um, and again, the numbers, speak for itself. The war is off the chain at 163.
Explain what WAR is for people that may not know what this
Oh,
is.
it's wins above replacement. I believe the idea of it is, there's a working definition of it. Um, oh, I'm brain farting right now.
Oh, it's all right. You can think about that, but when you talk about Barry Bonds, you think of
Yeah,
somebody that's like you. You think more of what he did at the plate than he did what he did in the outfield, and which is and it's controversial. I mean, he was a great outfielder too. We forget about that. He was a base stealer,
hmm
um, and he was one of those guys that people say even before the steroid era, he was an MVP candidate. He was going to be one of the greats. You know,
right.
before the steroids.
And that 5 year peak you see from 2000 to 2004 was the second peak. He actually had two peaks. The first one, like you're talking about, when he was young. So from 1990 to 1994, he won three MVPs,
Mhm.
finished second and fourth place in the other two votes. He averaged 35 home runs and 38 stolen bases, won a Gold Glove in all five of those seasons. So he's considered, like you said, one of the best left fielders of all time in his career. Then in 2004, he averaged 45 home runs. Of course, setting the single season record in 2001 with 73. And in that, time frame, 258 home runs, 306 intentional walks. So, you know, the numbers don't lie. Again, though, that postseason issue, the other than the one World Series in 2002 where he hit 471 and four home runs, um, 245 lifetime postseason career. Never played for a championship or played for a champion, I should say. But did come close. But the biggest glaring thing is going to be, the steroid issue.
Mhm.
And some people will argue, well, you don't know, you can't prove that, but like, you can't prove that Willie Mays didn't take steroids. You might can, you know.
Willie
Um,
Mays is his godfather too.
right, right. Which is why he wore. Was it why he wore 24? Yeah, he was. Which is why he wore 24 initially, as a Pittsburgh Pirate, and then he wore his father's number when he went to the Giants because his father, Bobby Bonds, played with Willie Mays, and they were 24 and 25 respectively. Um, so last but not least, it's kind. I don't want to say it's like a layup, but again, when you just look at the numbers,
Ooh, I didn't think you were going there.
I
I did not think
again,
you were going there. You shocked me with throw a curveball at me.
and the reason why I threw the curveball because Babe Ruth was also a pitcher. He started as a pitcher.
Right.
He was one. I think his first couple of seasons he averaged like 15 home runs, and I think he hit more home runs than most of the teams in his league because home runs just weren't. It, most teams average two or three home runs per team, and he's out homering the entire league at that time. But again, the numbers don't lie. 342 batting average lifetime. Um, was the home run king until he was dethroned by Henry Aaron, and uh, was also a all star pitcher. Threw a no hitter for the Boston Red Sox in one of their World Series in 1915, 1916, something like that. Um,
Now, you made this actually pretty tough now.
well, and it's hard because there's no when you see highlights of Babe Ruth, there's like five of him throwing, not fielding.
I don't think
Because
I've ever seen a highlight of him. I thought he was a first baseman, to be honest with you. I
he
thought
was
I did not. I don't think I've ever seen a defensive highlight of Babe Ruth outside of pitching.
from reports back in that time frame. He was actually a above average outfielder. Despite his size, he's pretty plump, but he actually um, had a really good arm. Would actually throw people out from the right field at second base. But he had a strong arm because of his pitching prowess. So, but most people know him a little bit about his pitching, nothing about his fielding. But so yeah, I had to put it because not putting him on here would just kind of been like
Yeah,
you got to add him to the
yeah.
conversation, because he's third all time, home
What kept
run
what kept
champion.
Clemente off? Because I just thought
Not
I just knew you were going to go with Clemente.
again, I'm trying to be as impartial as possible. He had power in spurts. He was a gap hitter,
Hmm.
doubles, triples, but not necessarily home runs. Most home runs he may have had was like maybe 20, 25. But again, you're talking about Babe Ruth 61, Barry Bonds 73, um, Hank Aaron 45. Like, they're almost double, triple of what Clemente would have hit. So again, when I'm talking about five tool, hitting not just for average, but also for power, and gaps, um, speed, fielding, catching, all of that. So I think Clemente was more 4 out of 5,
Mm,
and like I'd say 4.5 out of 5.
okay.
So it was tough. It really was. But again, just trying to be as fair as possible and impartial. You know. Now, if we do it by individual teams, then he's a lock. Which I think we'll probably segue in like November, December. We'll do Mount Rushmore just for the Phillies.
So originally, when we started talking and we said outfielders, my pick was probably going to be between a guy you had up there and a guy that you did not have up there.
Hmm.
It was going to be between a Willie Mays and a Ken Griffey Jr.
Hmm.
You didn't have Jr. up there.
I did
Um,
not.
and then when I thought about it, I, I I didn't think about Barry Bonds and I didn't think about Hank Aaron. Right.
Right.
Um, Darnell says there's no footage of Ruth in the outfield, but there is footage of him batting. That's suspicious.
Thank you,
um,
Darnell, for the conspiracy theory.
um, wow. Okay, so here's the
So
thing,
so
and this is
so
tough because
the reason why Griffey's not on here, going back to the whole Mantle argument, is the injury issue. So it's like clean career, playing, pretty much from the beginning of your career, maybe having a injury or two, but injuryless, you played a full career.
yeah, Griffey couldn't avoid the injuries in his later years. He just couldn't avoid them.
Right. Just couldn't
Um,
avoid him.
and it's tough because you have Babe Ruth, right? Who to some is considered the greatest of all time, right? To some. But then you have Hank Aaron, who broke Babe Ruth's records.
Hmm.
But then you have Barry Bonds, who broke Hank Aaron's record, and that broke Babe Ruth's record,
Right.
right?
Right.
So, I mean, records are made to be broken, of course.
Mhm.
So, with all that, on my Mount Rushmore for the outfielders, I would have to go with Barry Bonds.
Wow.
I would have to go with Barry
Mm.
because home runs, he has more than Hank. He has more than Babe Ruth. He has more than everybody. He has the most. So let me just do that. He was a base stealer. He was a great outfielder. He got on people's nerves, but that has nothing to do with the game. Um, won back to back MVPs, right? Or
Hmm.
three MVPs
I
in
believe 3-0
Pittsburgh,
started.
or a couple in Pittsburgh.
He
One
didn't.
in
They weren't back to. I don't think they were back to back in Pittsburgh, but I know they were back to back in San Fran. But I'll look it up.
So I really didn't think I would go this way because I thought I was going to go with Willie. But when you broke it all down, I think I have to go with Barry.
So even with the steroid, because we all know,
Well, let me.
even before steroids, like if there was anybody that didn't have to take steroids, it was Barry Bonds, right?
Right,
We can all agree there.
right.
But because of that steroid cloud hanging over, and he never publicly admitted knowingly taking the cream or whatever it was.
Let me take my microphone out of the holster and get comfortable for this conversation.
you know, because there's arguments that say, well, Babe Ruth had the funds and whatever to get a hold of, like, whatever there was steroids at the time, horse pills or whatever. It's like, yeah, but if we give everything a clean slate and we just go purely by the numbers, juice ball era, juice people era, non-juice people era, you know. One of the arguments I read was, even though Barry Bonds may have been part of the steroid era, he was the only one that was able to come out on top. Out of everybody, Mark McGuire couldn't do it. Sammy Sosa couldn't do it. Like they all broke down, and you know,
And Barry never did.
Barry never did. And it's funny because even when he
Which
retired,
should lead you to believe that maybe he didn't do what everybody's accusing him of doing.
knowingly, because again, that's the argument. It's like Rafael Palmeiro is
Whether
like,
you knew it or not, you're supposed to break down, right?
maybe. Well, because he was he was accused more of the HGH and the growth hormone, which is
Right,
designed to recover. It's help for
right,
quick recovery.
right.
And he had allegedly had arthritis in his elbow. All the power areas he had arthritis. So that's where the cream comes in.
Well, here's where I come in with the steroid argument. This is my place. Steroids does not help you hit a baseball. Steroids does not help you catch a baseball. Steroids helps you elongate your workouts to become stronger. Steroids can help you in recovery depending on what you. I'm just putting
Yeah,
all that
yeah.
stuff HGH, creatine, I'm putting all that under the same umbrella of steroids.
Right.
Um, they can help you recover. They can help you get stronger. They can help you um, extend your workouts. They cannot help you hit a baseball. They cannot help you catch a baseball. They can help you work out to get stronger to throw a baseball better. Maybe they can help you get faster by being stronger, but they don't help your reaction time when breaking for a steal, when getting your jump. So, not excusing any of the steroid athletes, but understand that baseball is not a sport where steroid enhances your game. It enhances things outside of the game to help you enhance your game.
Hmm.
So, with that being said, I'm not mad at any of the guys that took steroids because it made the game fun, but I'm still going with Barry Bonds. Even with that cloud hanging over his head, I'm going with Barry.
Barry Bonds won 7 MVPs. He won his first one in 90, back to back 92, 93. Didn't win another MVP until 2001, where he won four in a row.
And 91, 92, and 90, I mean, 90, 92, and 93 were all with Pittsburgh because he went to
Well, no,
Sanford in 94, right?
92 he was with Pittsburgh. 93 he signed with San Fran, and those were back to
Okay, so
back
it's 93.
MVPs.
Okay.
Um,
Um,
yeah,
7 MVPs.
7 MVPs.
How many MVPs Babe Ruth? Did they even give away MVP back then?
Interesting story about that. His first 5 years in the big leagues, they didn't have an MVP award.
Uh,
Then when they did award it, you were only allowed to win it once in your career.
hmm.
You were not allowed to win like back to back like we have now.
Did he win the very first MVP?
I don't know if he won the first one, but I know
If he didn't win the first one, then he's
he.
cancer.
So they they say. I mean, they say he only won one MVP, which is like, how the hell did that happen? Yeah, he won one MVP in his 10th year in the big leagues when they first started, but it was just the one. And then I think 10 years later, or 8 or 9 years later, 1931, you were allowed to win multiple MVPs, but he was like fifth and sixth in the voting towards the end of his career.
He probably would have won multiple.
He probably would have, yeah.
Unfortunately for him, he wasn't allowed to. It is what it is. I'm still going with Barry Bonds. I know you don't want to go with Barry. I know
I
you don't
just
want to go because I know the whole I
the postseason thing is it's a thing because I think about the clutchness too. Like even if he had like one or two bad, like Mike Schmidt had several bad playoff series, but in 1980 he finally came through, won the MVP, and that was all taken away. But I think had Barry Bonds won that World Series in 2002 against the Angels when he was just like batting 500 and hitting 10 home runs, that might have helped the case. But just the fact that he was just so unclutch.
But see, here's the thing, and we've had this discussion in baseball. One person doesn't make a difference. Doesn't make the difference, I should say. Because you have the best person on your team does not make you a championship caliber team or something like that. For instance, with I always go back to basketball. If LeBron is on your team, you immediately become a championship contender. You cannot say that about anybody in the era of baseball that can be on a team, and because he's on that team, they are now a championship contender.
But can you? I think basketball is a little different though.
It's very different, but I'm just saying
So so
because
so
you can affect so much in basketball. One player can affect so much, whereas in baseball, one player cannot have the same effect as one player in basketball.
okay. So here's the reverse: 2002 World Series or 2002 season. If Barry Bonds is not on that team, do they even get to the World Series?
No,
Take away this. Take away those home runs.
no, they don't
So
get it.
not to say that one person makes it. I would say one person does make a difference because that's why you have that MVP.
One
You
person gives you a grand advantage, right? Because they can change some things, but were they really a championship caliber team because of Barry?
that's I think that's the real question you have to ask.
I can't say it was because of Barry. I think Barry enhanced their chances, but I don't think Barry made them a contender. Unless you're talking about they were like on the cusp of being a
Mhm.
contender and Barry put them over.
Right, and
Like
I
that's
think it depends on what the team. So, like, if you go to the Phillies' first Championship, prior to their first World Series, they were in the playoffs 3 straight years,
mhm,
and those were actually arguably on paper the better teams. I think two of those teams won 100 games, but the 80 team, they didn't get into the playoffs until the last day. They played a 5 game series when the NLCS was only 5 games. Every game was in the extra innings except for one.
mhm.
But if you don't have Mike Schmidt on that team and Pete Rose, so the argument is that Pete Rose was the catalyst on the team because he brought the best out of Mike
Right.
Schmidt.
And I'll send you back to the Sixers world title back in the 80s. It was Moses Malone that
Moses
put them
Malone,
over,
yeah,
right? Put them over. But they had a squad beforehand. The Phillies had a squad, right? Before Pete Rose got there. Pete Rose just put them over.
right,
The Sixers
and
had a squad before Moses
Moses,
got there, but Moses made the difference.
right.
You put in baseball, you have to have a team. Like and
I
if
agree.
not in any other sport, baseball, you have to have a team.
I agree.
Okay, think of some of those teams we spoke of last week, where we looked at the roster, we were just like, wow,
Mhm.
he was on that team. Wow, he was on that team. You can't put Barry on the Baltimore Orioles this year then they're a contender.
Right, I agree.
You can't do that. But you can put LeBron on the worst team in basketball, and they are going to be expected to at least make the playoffs.
So you put LeBron on the Sixers? Well, that's a bad.
Not
That's a
yet.
bad. Not
If you
yet.
put him on the process Sixers, he makes a difference.
Put him on the what do they call the 72ers or the 95ers? What are they called?
He makes the difference. But you put Barry on a scrub team because he only has 4 or 5 at bats a game. He
Right.
only has 4 or 5 at bats to make a difference. Whereas
And,
everybody else has to also play their part. In
right.
baseball, everyone has to play their part.
Yeah, I think that's why I think basketball is different because like one or two players are really all you like. Look at the Sixers when they went to the finals in 2001. Iverson was taking 90, 80, 90 shots a game, and everybody else was watching him play, and he would get half of a minute. They'd win every night. But
But but let me stop you. The other guys on that team were defenders.
right,
So that allowed Allen Iverson to be who he was. Everyone else defended and kind of played their part. Um, Barry Bond, you got to put people around Barry
mhm.
for like if everyone strikes out and Barry's the only guy hitting the ball,
No, you're right.
he's only hitting one run home runs.
And that's like with the Bryce Harper. He's going to hit 40 home runs and have like what 60
Bryce,
RBIs.
yeah, Bryce always hit a home run without anybody
It's annoying.
on base. Darnell says you definitely need players around you. Just ask all the former okay. All the former Penwood players. Yeah, you need them. You need the people around you. You definitely need the people around you. In this game, you just do. I mean, you need people around you in every sport, but sometimes there are players that are good enough to elevate your team no matter how bad your team is. In baseball, I don't think that's possible. In basketball and hockey, I'm going to just assume hockey because I'm not really a big hockey guy.
Love hockey.
Basketball, hockey, football, you can hide your worst player. In baseball, we had a saying, the ball will find you.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your worst player, if he's in the lineup, has to have an at bat. Your worst player has to play a place on the field. So, there's no hiding anybody in baseball. Coaches have a little thing where they try to hide someone in the lineup. Maybe they can't really hit that well. You try to hide them somewhere between a couple of good hitters or something like that and hope for the best. But they still have to step up to the plate. It just is what it is. So
Agreed.
who are you picking though? I'm not letting you off the hook. Who are you going to pick out of that? You had
I,
Ted
I,
Williams, Hank
I've
Aaron, Willie Mays, Barry Bonds, Babe Ruth.
all of my life I've always leaned, even before Barry Bonds, I've always leaned towards Willie Mays just because of the 5 tool aspect. He won. You know, wasn't always clutch, but still was able to get over the hump and win. 1 or 2 championships and stuff like that. And it's
I
hard
wanted to
because
pick Willie Mays. I just want to put that. I wanted to pick Willie.
oh no,
I really wanted
right.
to pick Willie. I did. I wanted to pick Willie Mays. He's on my
Um,
Diamond Dynasty team.
I wanted to get him so bad, just like I wanted to get Reggie and Bob Gibson. It took me 3 seasons of MLB to get them, and then they sucked. If I gotta, if I'm gonna be fair and not like be a homer about it, I gotta lean towards Barry Bonds too. He ekes it
Wow. So are you saying that I'm
he
gonna?
ekes it out. He ekes it out because he was slightly more powerful, and he, even though did not have an arm, worked. He worked extremely hard on his technique. He had great technique as a left fielder to hide the fact that his arm was weak, to make
I
himself
agree
one
with
of the
that.
best left fielders ever.
I agree with that. But now I have to use some of your own words against you.
Whatever.
You said you have to be fair and pick Barry. Does that mean when you argue with me about Barry Bonds and Reggie Jackson, you're not being fair?
I am being fair. He wasn't clutch. Reggie Jackson was point blank in the third.
Okay. All right.
That's being fair.
Okay. All right. I'm okay. You win. You win that one.
Now, because I remember Travis had brought up that stat, which was phenomenal, about how Barry Bonds against Randy Johnson was like
That was amazing.
450 and like 5 home runs, and then against what, Greg Maddox, he was like 120.
That was amazing.
I was like,
That was amazing.
that was
I
amazing.
couldn't believe that. And I mean that's lefty on lefty. And the way Randy Johnson threw, he's throwing the ball, he's releasing the ball almost behind Barry and it's
Right.
coming across.
But when I'm thinking too, like as a hitter, that when you know you're facing a hardball pitcher, I don't want to say that it's easier, but you're matching energy. You know what I mean? So
You're
it's
sitting
like that.
fastball.
You're sitting fastball, right? Even slider is still hard. You know what I mean? It's still hard away, and it's still But when you're trying to hit a changeup or something floating and that's dancing,
Hmm.
and then you swing and miss one time, then you're cursing under your breath. You're trying to move up. It like sets your whole baseball mental mojo off
Yes.
as a hitter. That's the reason why I wasn't successful after high school. So it was like, wow, when you really think about it, it's like he's seeing the ball kind of shorter. It's a foot shorter. He doesn't, not that he didn't have a hard swing, but he didn't have to swing hard.
Right. Right.
You know,
Right. Well, I guess we both agree that we're the outfielder on our Mount Rushmore of baseball players is Barry Bonds.
Barry
I'm surprised
Bonds.
that we both. I didn't think we were both going to agree.
Yeah, and I'm gonna work on the survey and see what the people say. See if they agree with us, and maybe we'll have the people version. So next week, we'll do infielders.
Absolutely. Let us know what you think. You can also text us at 215-486-0335. That's 215-486-0335. You can text us and let us know what you think. Your votes will be counted there as well. And also,
And
by joining our text community, it enters you to all our contests and giveaways and all that good stuff too. What were you going to say?
and for our super fan out there, brother Darnell, I doubt that there'll be any Yankees on this list.
Well, Babe Ruth was on there.
He was a finalist. I kind of did that as a favor, but you know,
All right.
Mickey Mantle was a stone cold alcoholic, and Babe Ruth was a hoe. So
Babe Ruth was probably out. No, I'm not even going to do that. Is it time for me to make a guess of
it's time for you to make a guess,
is it
sir.
time for you to stump me?
It's time for you to get stumped.
I'm slamming my bottles down
I
on
don't
the
know.
floor.
You might.
Let me see. Two-time All-Star, 1995 World Series. They won the 95 World Series.
He was on the world champion team. Like that.
Four-time Gold Glove and the ALCS MVP. Was that in 95 as well? No, because the Braves won in 95, right?
Yeah.
Cubs.
No. So he was on the Expos of Montreal, the Atlanta Braves, the Cleveland Indians, the Brewers of Milwaukee, um, Los Angeles Dodgers, and San Francisco Giants.
95 World Series winner, but he was an ALCS MVP. Who won the
Uh-huh.
World Series in 95?
You said it already.
The Braves. The Braves won
Correct.
it.
This is
The
why
Braves
this.
won 90. See,
I
this is
had
the
a
fun.
I had a feeling this was going to throw you off.
It did. Braves won in 95, but he was an ALCS MVP some other year. Darnell's putting in his picks and stuff. He got a second team on
It's
here.
just it's we're not there yet, brother Darnell. Just one outfielder. We're getting to the
One
infield next week.
outfielder, one
This is a Mount
infielder, one
Rushmore.
pitcher, one
It's
catcher for the
it's
Mount
it's
Rushmore.
not it's not the all it's not the all star team yet. We're gonna get to that.
He's breaking it down for us. He played for the Milwaukee Brewers. He played for the Braves. He played for the Expos.
You're gonna kick yourself.
Name the teams he played for again.
Montreal Expos, Atlanta Braves, Cleveland Indians, Milwaukee Brewers, Los Angeles Dodgers, and the San Francisco Giants.
Why do I want to say Will Clark? I know Will Clark can play one of those guys.
He never played for the Braves.
He never played for the Braves. And not David Justice, because he was never an ALCS MVP. I'm trying to think who was on that Braves team, right? So, who was on that Braves team? Yeah, was Grissom on that team? No, he wasn't on that team. Kenny Lofton. Was it Kenny Lofton?
No, it wasn't Kenny Lofton.
Was Kenny Lofton a Brave?
Yeah, he was, but he wasn't on those teams. He was there later.
So you got the
Say
Braves.
say the previous name.
David Justice.
The one after that.
Marquise Grissom.
You got it.
It was Marquise Grissom.
It's Marquise Grissom. So Marquise
When was he
Grissom.
an ALCS
Hold on. Marquise Grissom was the world champion on the Atlanta Braves in 1995. Marquise Grissom was traded to the Cleveland Indians and was on the World Series team in 1997 against the Marlins. His only year and as an American League player, he won the ALCS MVP.
Wow.
Only 1 year, and then after that, he started to kind of he went to San Francisco, then the Dodgers, then I think he ended in Milwaukee.
So does that count? Did I get it?
You,
Since
I
you
gave
kind of led me to
you
it.
because once you said it, it's like, well, it won't be right for him to say like 20 more names. He mentioned them, so yeah. You technically got it off of a
Wow, I
guess.
did not realize Marquise Grissom was an ALCS MVP.
Yeah.
I did not.
I forgot he played for the Brewers at the end. And he's I think he was a coach for the Braves. I think he coaches for the Reds now. I think he's like a first or third base
He
coach.
was never a Philly.
No. No, you think Kenny Lofton was a Philly.
Kenny Lofton was a
And
Philly.
then I think he we got him from the Braves, or I think he left us for the Braves. I think he was for Cleveland for a long time.
Right.
Uh, and he came to us in the late 2000, mid 2000. It was the crappy 2000 years,
Right. It was early. I think it was early.
right? And then I think he went to the Braves or went back to Cleveland, something like that.
Huh. Look at that. Marquise Grissom.
Marquise Grissom, sir.
And Miguel still was mad at the fact that I used to like the Braves as a kid.
That's why I said you were gonna kick yourself. Like you should know this.
Yeah. I didn't know Marquise Grissom played for all those teams either.
Yeah. And I was thinking of Otis Nixon. Remember Otis Nixon?
Yeah.
Um,
Otis Nixon had an old face.
yeah, and he had the body of a crackhead. But I didn't realize he only played for the Braves for like 4 years.
Really? That's it?
That's it. He played the 90. He played from 90 to 93. That's 4 years, and then after that, he just kind of trailed on to the other teams.
Hmm.
And it was like hard. He fell off a cliff. After that, it was like 214, 192. But those 4 years with the Braves are like his best.
Oldest Nixon. All right. Well,
Oldest
there
Nixon.
you have it. This has been the Check Swing Podcast. Of course, join us next week. You can check, well, first of all, you can check out anything you missed over on the New Twist Radio YouTube channel. Go over there and just check out the Check Swing Podcast. You can also check us out on, what is it? Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that good stuff. Check us out over there as well. iHeartRadio, all that good stuff. Join us next week and for the following weeks after that as we continue our conversation about the baseball Mount Rushmore, as well as some of the best players from the outfield, infield, pitchers, and catchers. That's how we're doing the Mount Rushmore. A position, and a place on the Mount Rushmore. Got to be the best. All right. So far, Miguel and I have Barry Bonds as our outfielder, as our first face on Mount Rushmore, on the baseball Mount Rushmore. But you got to tell us who you got. All right. So for Miguel and myself, we're going to get up out of here. We appreciate y'all checking us out. Make sure you check us out next week. Same time, 9 o'clock on Wednesday night. Talk to y'all next time. Peace.
Deuces.